Welcome to the first episode of Origins Unknown podcast. My name is Chris Holt.
And I'm Claire Huntington. And together, Chris and I are so excited to bring you this passion project.
As adult adoptees with very different origin stories, we want to share the good, the bad, and ugly sides of adoption.
In addition to sharing our personal origin search stories, Chris and I will also be sharing your stories because we believe that every adoption or biological family search is amazing and important.
We will also be interviewing professionals and providing resources that we feel are important to the adoption community, from searchers to mental health professionals, even down to unconventional resources such as, believe it or not, psychics.
For this first episode, however, we decided to ask each other icebreaker questions in an attempt to get to know each other's stories and share them with you.
So we are so excited to share this first episode with you, our adoption community.
Please join us on this wonderful journey together.
Enjoy!
Yay!
I think I walked the long way home. Now fall, just pick me up and hold me close when things get rough. And you never walk the road alone, 'cause we've all got our origins unknown.
Origins Unknown podcast. This is our first episode. I am Chris Holt,
I'm Claire Huntington.
and we are going to be talking about adoption. So we figured we'd kind of kick off this first episode to kind of talk about our backgrounds a little, but not going in too much depth because there's different topics we can kind of segment into different episodes. So Claire and I are going to take turns reading each other questions, and we'll both answer them so you can kind of get to know us a little more, get a little information about our backstories with being adoptees, and we'll take it from there.
This is also going to serve as a great barometer or starting point where we don't know our origins or items that we may be lacking. It'll be a great thing to look back on in the future when we start discovering our origins.
Yep.
And a great way to compare our stories and the various differences.
Absolutely. And I think one of the big reasons we wanted to start this was because we want to kind of create and develop a community that other adoptees can gravitate towards and use to help them either heal or manage any situations they're going through, because I think it's a common feeling amongst adoptees of, this feeling of isolation or no one can understand what, I come from or my situation or circumstance. So we want to really create a community that we can all heal together, kind of maybe talk about things that are, traumatic to us, because there is lots of trauma for adoptees, and we don't want to not cover those things, because we want to cover everything around adoption, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And some of this stuff might get real, but we also want to show, the happy sides of adoption and stuff like that. So
completely. We want to show every aspect of it. And I can't tell you how many people that I've come into contact with since doing this podcast that I've spoken to every day, people I thought that I've known for years, and they have an adoption or an unknown origin story. It's been such a great experience for me to realize just how many people adoption has touched.
Yeah.
Just every life.
And that's another thing to touch on, that is this idea that I think, especially in this country, everyone's just so divided. So I'd like to try to find a topic that we can all talk about, that we all connect on, and it really doesn't matter about anything else. Because I think that adoption supersedes all those things, and it's very deep-seated and kind of is intertwined into the fabric of who we are, and along with, knowing other people that are adopted or siblings or relatives or whatnot. I think that adoption touches everyone. So we felt like the topic is broad, complex, and it'll give us a lot to chat about. So
totally. So with that, would you like to start first, or
sure.
do you want me to start first?
Yeah, I can start with the first question. Okay, I guess I should phrase that. Where were you born?
Yeah.
Where were you born, hospital and city?
So this is, I'm not 100% sure. After talking with my mom, apparently I was born in Regina. I thought I was from Prince Albert, but I'm not 100%. Being from a smaller area in Saskatchewan, all these smaller towns, you would go to Regina to have a baby back in the day. So I think Regina, probably one of the old hospitals, but I don't know. I have no idea.
Okay. From my records, I'm an identical triplet. So my brothers and I, based on our records, we were born in Seoul, Korea. That's all we know.
No hospital?
Don't know anything about the hospital or anything like that. Yeah.
What time were you born?
No idea.
No idea either. And this is a very interesting topic. There's a lot of things that adoptees are excluded from without realizing. One of those things is birth charts. I get asked all the time what my astrological birth chart is. And for this requirement, you need to know where you were born and what time. And I have no idea. So that was one of those things that you wouldn't realize that you'd be excluded from. One of those reminders. It's almost like a splash of cold water. You're not thinking about being adopted, and then something happens and you're like, oh, I don't know that. And then you have to have the awkward conversation of why.
Yeah, I think I recall, childhood friends talking about, I was born at 3:13 a.m. And I always thought, how do you know that? I mean, that's kind of cool. I have no idea what time I was born.
I know. That's one thing I really want to know. And I'm going to be so bougie when I find out.
I celebrate that time.
I really hope it's like 2 a.m. so I can call everyone and wake them up. Be like, I was born.
That's amazing. Let's see. Did your birth mother see or hold you?
I don't know.
That, no idea. Yep. I don't know how you would know that.
Well, if you were placed later.
Oh, I guess, yeah.
I just get the sense, I have no way of knowing this, but I feel like I might have been known for a bit.
Okay.
I don't know. Like, no, by known I mean, I think I might have been with her for a bit.
Well, I did again, this is kind of going off on a tangent, but when I did a birth parent search, I started it 6 years ago. I did find out that, again, this is going off on a tangent, but our birth parents were married, so I'm assuming they held us until they gave us up. So that's just an assumption. So
one person had to hold 2 of you.
Yeah.
That's just a numbers thing.
It's just too many babies.
It's
like, I only have so many arms.
This is an intense one. So are you ready?
I'm ready.
If you, as an adoptee, had to reduce the feeling you have when you think about adoption to one word, what word would you use?
And again, this is just me personally. The only word I can think of is blessing.
Yeah.
What about you?
That's a good one. I shouldn't have let you go first on that one. Grateful, I would say. Hugely grateful and the opportunities I was afforded, especially with having some of my difficulties and challenges. I would not have been able to be the person I am now, I don't think, if I hadn't had the exact parents I did.
Yeah. I mean, that boils down to also like the idea of timing and, all sorts of random things that cause people to make decisions.
And I accidentally put a duplicate in here. So go to this one.
Okay. What percentage of people do you feel completely comfortable with talking to you about your adoption?
5%.
100%. I am open about it. I don't care who asks about it. I am an open book when it comes to that. So,
but that's where our personalities differ. You're great with confrontation. For me,
I love confrontation.
Oh gosh.
Oh, I thrive off of it.
I know
I always think like, I just want to confront that. I want to say what I want to say. Yeah.
My problem is that when it comes to adoption, as soon as you start telling your story, I find people don't listen, they talk. So especially people, I'm finding with fellow adoptees. Fellow adoptees, I'm 100% comfortable, I should say.
Okay.
However, people who are from the outside looking in and they'll ask me like, do you want to find your family? First of all, trigger word, real. Mm-hmm. Real family. Trigger, I know people don't mean to. But then I find I often have people talk over me and I get the sense of, you should feel grateful. How dare you wonder? And they start telling me how I should feel or telling me horror stories.
And these are people that are not adopted?
Non-adoptees. All the time.
I've never had anyone say to me, you should be grateful. Never heard that. That's weird.
I don't get that from my parents. I get it in a really wonderful way of that they're just as grateful for me. So I've never gotten that pressure or in a negative life that you should feel grateful. But I get that. I get really negative feedback of people. You should be grateful. How dare you? Like, how dare you do that to your parents, or how dare you care? Or
that's odd.
And I wonder if it's also a gender thing too.
Yeah. And then I was also going to say, because, Claire's from Canada, I live in the US. So I think that there are cultural things that might be slightly different too, but I'm not sure.
Well, it's like when I said I was late at the airport because I got Canadian trapped.
Yeah, I was so confused about what you meant by that, because all I can think of, I sort of associated Parent Trap with that, and I'm like, Parent Trap, Canadian Trap, like what?
I got stuck holding a door open.
Oh yeah, that's right. You were like, I don't want to pass people on the escalators. Or you said, why don't people walk down escalators?
And or walk up escalators, and so I didn't want to pass people.
Yeah, I said because Americans are lazy, but
like, so it was really fun. I was like, I got Canadian trapped, which to me is like, yeah. So wait, I think it's mine.
Yeah.
This is your question. This is really good. Is being adopted something you think about on a daily basis?
No. Yeah, I don't, it's not something that's on the forefront of my mind. I think it's just something that I know, obviously, but I don't overanalyze it. I don't think about it. I don't view myself as adopted. And I think that that's just a testament to my parents. But yeah, I was just jokingly telling Claire that, I forget that I'm Korean because, again, my parents are white until someone's racist to me. And then I have to look at my skin. I'm like, oh, yeah, I forgot, So for me, it's no, it's not something I ever really think about until someone asks me about it. That's about it.
Yeah, I would say no, though I can't speak to, we've been afforded some really great opportunities in having people send us their stories and messages. That I was brought back. We have someone who's a 15-year-old girl and going through it, and being you weren't a 15-year-old girl.
No.
But I was a 15-year-old girl, and boy, that is you couldn't pay me to go back to that. Like, but I remember in that time, and I didn't think that I ever had a stage about thinking about being adopted a lot. But not until I talked to my grandmother, and she informed me that I used to kind of have questions and whatnot. So I find that during a lot of periods of self-identity and not knowing things, and it's like I said, I'll go years without thinking about it. Mm-hmm. And then something will happen, some sort of barrier, and it's like cold water being splashed on me. Yeah. Right? And so, but being in the time where you don't know, where you're having identity crisis anyway, those were the moments. But then again, that could be because I didn't have any biological siblings.
Yeah. And I think my brothers, pose as a crutch, for not wondering as much.
You came with a wolf pack.
Yeah. But I think also there are a lot of things in my personal life with my birth parent search that I found that maybe I've repressed or compartmentalized in a way that I can't really consciously access it until something is brought to my attention and that makes me think about something. So, yeah, I mean, the more I started digging, the more I started experiencing emotions about it.
That's a really amazing thing, because in doing research for this, how many times have there been where I've messaged you and just been shocked and like not thought of stuff? I feel like when you go digging and you think, the more you think about it, the more it's ever present in your life. Yep. I feel like adoptees, as a large part of being successful as an adoptee is being able to compartmentalize and lock it up and not let it govern yourself. Mm-hmm. Again, you guys, I will state that neither one of us are licensed psychologists or therapists. No. So a lot of that, what we're saying.
Although we've been through a lot of therapy individually.
Yes. We've been afforded the luxury. But I will say, a lot of the things that and we'll have to add disclaimers and whatnot, but a lot of the things we're learning along with you. So this is something great about this podcast, is that we have no idea.
Yeah. And we're really encouraging people to reach out, which we've already had a very overwhelming response from just strangers. And part of this is obviously talking about us, but mainly I think it's more about opening dialogue with other people. So we want to interview people. We want to talk about just situations that you could never even fathom, but they exist. So, but part of this is to try to make this interactive because we do want to discuss things that all of you are thinking about or you know, things that are bothering you about it, you know, about your situation. You know, we want to bring light to that. So,
and also too, this is our community podcast. This is our, you know, just because if your situation is different than ours, that doesn't mean we don't want to investigate it and come through to you.
Absolutely.
We also talked about having an episode that, as an adoptee, if you start dating somebody, you can just direct them to that episode. So you don't have to answer all the things of like, oh, you can't say that.
Yep.
Or
because the more you research some stuff, there are common links between most adoptees in terms of just behavioral things.
Yes.
That sometimes you might think, why am I like this? And then you meet another adoptee and you have this aha moment and you think, holy smokes, I see this person sees me, you know? And I think that that's one thing that adoptees want to feel.
So we have had some really weird instances where we don't talk for days. Mm-hmm. And I feel like that might be a common thing for adoptees, that independence a little bit. Like, not for all of us, but for the type, we'll probably determine we're the same type of adoptee, but we'll go days without talking, and then I'll pick up my phone to text you.
Oh, that's happened
a few times, and then he'll text me at the exact same moment. Like, we'll send a message, and it'll be... Whoop.
It's like, ding, ding. Yep.
That's super creepy. But...
All right, my turn. If you as an adoptee could receive a gift from a magic genie, what would you ask for? That's a good question. I know exactly what I'm going to say.
Why don't you go first then?
A photo of my biological parents. Because I don't have that.
Oh. Ours is totally different.
What's yours?
I would love to like be blood related or physically related to my parents.
See, that's the thing, that because I have my triplet brothers, I've never... And again, if I was a solo person, I guarantee you my answer might be different, you know?
I find that, but then again, with my family, there are a lot of really great intricacies of my life. I find that my friends become family and that we don't require the blood, but if I could just have that, even not just for me, but for my...
Yeah.
Maybe I make them do like a blood pact.
Spit on it, shake hands.
Do you think I could ask for that for my birthday?
Okay. That would be hilarious.
No, I'm just kidding. My brother, I think it's my turn to ask you. I let you answer first. What were the circumstances surrounding your placement?
Short answer, after some digging and discovering, you know, certain people that had certain information, the circumstance that was brought to light, which was kept from us for, 32 years until I searched for information, was that our birth parents were married. Our birth father was a cab driver in Korea, so he could not afford taking care of all three of us. And then I found out we have an older brother who was 5 years old when we were born. So he couldn't afford 4 babies on his salary. So from what I was told, and this will be another episode about Korean adoption because it's an animal in and of itself, but they basically came to the adoption agency and asked them to forge a bunch of documents to make us eligible to be put into the adoption system, which is, another story again. But that's really what I was told. Again, whether that's true or not, no idea.
Wow. I would just like to do a caveat as well too. I have an extremely expressive face, as you guys might notice. And Chris and I tried not to find out too much about each other's stories beforehand so that we're reacting real time. So there'll be a lot of times where you see, so it's us reacting, but that's heavy. That's like...
Well, I was always under the impression that our birth mother was like a teenager. So it made sense in my head. And then when I found that out, and it was like, oh, we were a happy family, but it was just a financial situation, then that was a little heartbreaking. But again,
that would be heartbreaking.
I don't even know if it's true, because again, based on Korean adoption and the culture there, lots of stories are made up, and just to paint a picture, or to cause adoptees not to go searching. So there are a lot of messed up cultural things in Korea that are atypical. So
I was actually at the grocery store, and the cashier, who I was just listening to my headphones, and she's like, oh, you're listening to your headphones? And I said, well, I'm listening to podcasts because I'm launching a podcast. And she said, oh, what about? And right now in Canada, everything's locked down.
Mm-hmm.
So when you go to the grocery store, like that's the first person I had seen in like a week. So it's very like, hi.
Yeah, you want to
they
interact.
Exactly. And like they only have a certain amount of people. So I was a little bit more open to talking than I normally was. And she told me that she was adopted from a religious institution. I'm not going to say anything because I don't, religious institution adopted her out, and she'd been hunting for her birth parents. And she'd been hunting, and for, I think, anywhere between 4 to 7 years, it wasn't clear, that they kept telling her they were reaching out to her birth mother, but they weren't. Because they said she should be grateful. And it wasn't until she hired another outside source that she found out that this birth mother had never been contacted.
Yikes.
So I feel like people tell me stories more than you.
Yeah.
Maybe it's because you're so confrontational.
Maybe.
Sorry.
Let's see. Did your birth mother pick your adoptive family?
No. Social services picked my family.
Yeah. No, on my end.
Do you have an open or closed adoption?
Again, I wasn't even aware of this term until recently, but I believe most adoptions in Korea, especially in the 80s, were closed.
So mine was also closed. I think open adoption is a fairly new concept. That's going to be probably an entire series on itself.
Oh, yeah. I have a friend that did an open.
Yes, I've experienced it. So it's got both have pros and cons. For those of you who are watching and aren't adoptees and are kind of new to the subject, a closed adoption refers to, especially in Canada where I'm from, that legally, regardless of if I wanted to find out any information, so put this in perspective, if I wanted to find out any information, or my family did, I was not legally allowed to until I was 18. So another huge issue with being adopted in Canada, and I understand it, I get it. Like, I get why, but I couldn't know anything, and I didn't have any rights to know anything.
Until you were 18.
Until you're 18. So my friends were all excited about drinking and smoking, and I was excited to know
It's like
that I could, like, I didn't want to know, but I was like, yeah, I can do it, right?
you wake up on your birthday and everyone's like going to the bar and you're like searching on the internet.
I actually searched once, and I actually accidentally, like, I was just searching on those like adoption reunion, and I literally, this is how I knew I wasn't ready. I remember I was in my mid-20s, and I was having a fight with my boyfriend at the time. So like, of course I'm doing destructive behavior, like Googling adoption records, and I thought I found birth date, everything, but they were looking for a boy.
Oh.
I had a panic attack, and I was like, no, never going on that website again. So
Yeah. I mean, sometimes ignorance is bliss, but at the end of the day, we're human beings, and human beings just want to know. We want to know where we come from. We want to know our origins. We want to know all those things. So I think it's just hardwired into just being human.
I think I asked you.
Oh. What did your birth mother name you?
I don't know. However, I had to get my birth certificate once on Christmas Eve to fly to a foreign country, again, in my 20s, because I didn't have my birth certificate in Regina when I was home. So I had to get a birth certificate because I had to get a passport. So I went to the birth certificate office, and I grabbed one, and they were doing me a favor, and they sped up. And the girl came with my birth certificate, and she's like, wait, what is your name? Because they have your number on file.
Oh.
She almost gave me my original birth certificate.
Whoa.
So I found out I do have a name. I do have and again, guys, I'm not going to, if you find that I'm not using people's names in my story, I have a lot of people in my life who are very supportive of the moves I'm making, but they just don't want their stories to be out there. This is my personal choice. But so I have a friend who found out her name, and it's so funny.
I don't know. My name is pretty bad.
So you know your name?
Oh, yeah.
I'm like only going to call you this name now.
You're going to laugh.
No, like you, like literally like.
Okay.
I better.
My given Korean name, and you have to remember it's always spoken last name, middle, like surname, middle name, first name. So that's
like
the order.
Bond, James Bond?
Yeah. So my Korean name is Kim Dong-soo. So that means my
Beautiful.
surname is Kim, middle name is Dong, and my first name is Sue. So I'm
A boy named Sue?
Exactly. Exactly. So that's when I heard that song, I was like, okay, it's not that bad. It's not that bad. Johnny Cash wrote about it, sang about it, all good. So yes, Kim Dong Soo.
So do you have to fight your birth father like Johnny Cash did? Because he named you Sue.
Well, from what I was told, he's dead. So yeah, that's sorry. Spoiler. But Jeremy's name was Kim Dong Chul.
Jewel?
Chul, Chul.
Oh, Jewel. I thought you had Jewel and Sue.
No. And then Justin's was Kim Dong Myung. Myung. Meung, I think. So, yep. That's my name. Boy named Sue.
Sue. Okay. Well, too bad that's branded. We can't put that on t-shirts.
I know.
All right. I think you go now.
Okay. Does anyone else in your birth mother's family know about you?
Oh, unknown.
Yeah, I don't know. Again, based on what I was told, if from the records that I read, our birth mother had like 6 siblings, our birth father had like 7, so or somewhere like a large family. So I would think in the 80s in Korea, triplets are not common. So I would think that someone within my extended family at least would at least know, but no idea.
It's not like you could hide being pregnant with triplets.
Yeah, exactly. That's another thing, you know?
Like I know that there's some adoption stories where the birth mother was actually able to hide it because they weren't showing.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, there's again, everyone tells me stories now.
Yeah.
I am the keeper of records.
No one says anything.
I don't know. I have no idea. That's going to be a fun surprise. When I have no idea. How old were your birth parents when you were born? So you kind of answered that.
Yeah, so all I know is that our birth mother was 26 and our birth father was 32.
It's like kind of my age. Crazy. So from what I gather, I think again, this is piecing back information, but I think my birth mother was 19.
Okay.
So birth father probably within that range.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I just always thought, oh, well, she was young. That makes sense. Like, you know, if you're 17, you have 3 babies, what are you going to do? I mean, especially in a country in the 80s, Korea was a very, very, you know, third world type of country. So, next question. Were your birth parents married when you were born?
No, I don't think.
From my understanding, yes, but again, it could all be lies. They could be alive, and who knows? But
see, after talking to you, like I'm questioning everything.
Mm-hmm.
It's like as if, you know, like I didn't think about any information being wrong, but now I question everything.
Yeah.
If I become more confrontational from this, I'm going to blame you.
That's not a bad thing.
Okay. Maybe you'll become more Canadian.
Maybe.
What did we...
How does that happen?
I don't know.
What would make me more Canadian?
Sorry. Well, you've been watching Letterkenny, so...
I'll be more polite.
Okay. What is your ethnic racial background?
From my understanding, I'm 100% Korean. Purebred.
I don't know. So, fun story. In Regina, we have this wonderful thing called the Mosaic. It's so much fun. It goes on for about a week, and it's the big to-do, especially when I was growing up. Mm-hmm. So there's different pavilions. So there's a German pavilion.
Oh, like a world, like
yeah.
Everything. Yep.
So Regina is really great in being inclusive. We love, because we're smaller.
It's called Mosaic?
Yeah.
That's weird because there's a Korean sponsored trip for adult adoptees called Mosaic.
Oh, that's so cool. So many intricacies. But it's like the most fun thing. So when you're a kid, a lot of your friends, like, so you know how you would normally do, like, if there's like Korean dance or Ukrainian dance or where do you ever perform? No other city really has stuff. Well, here, this was your was your Elton John concert. Like you were on Vegas trip, like you were performing for all week and like this was your jam. So you'd go see your friends perform.
That's cool.
There were crafts and like food and stuff like that. And so all my friends would be excited. We'd all go to the pavilion and like, so one of my friends would be like, oh, we're in the Italian pavilion. She'd be like dancing it and doing stuff. One of my really good friends growing up was in the Ukrainian pavilion. So I'd go watch her dance and hang out. That was my favorite one because there's the pierogies.
Yes.
And then so there'd be friends like from like Turks and Caicos and everywhere. That was when I felt super adopted. Because I didn't know. So there's like I'm like, is there like a question mark pavilion? And that's like when I just like didn't know. Another thing that it became abundantly clear, and this is actually my one tattoo, the story behind it. I don't think my parents even know this, but I didn't know what my ethnicity was. And I asked an older friend what my ethnicity was. And they said, well, you're a pirate. And so I went and I did a full presentation on pirates. And my family tree was like literally like a giant octopus. I remember my dad being so ticked at me because I left it super behind because of ADHD and was like coloring it in. I did an octopus and like, so I didn't know. So we were doing ethnicity day. I didn't know what it was. So I feel like that's also been a thing too for me that I haven't ever felt any pride in any, and that's just like, that's one of the things I want to find out. What time, city, and like, what am I?
Yeah. I mean, my brothers and I lived overseas most of our life. So, you know, being a third culture kid, you don't really identify with any particular culture. You just kind of assimilate to wherever you're living. So like in Singapore, they actually did that at the school that I went to, where they would have like a tour of the world type of thing, and cuisines and, you know, different, you know, clothing and whatever. But for most of us, we're all expats for the most part. So we all felt, you know, kind of in the same boat. So I never really thought about being adopted, or, I mean, it was obvious because my parents are white and people would ask or stare or whatever, but I don't know. Maybe I just pushed it in the back of my mind and I just didn't want to face it. That could very well be the situation. I don't know.
You're a kid, right? Like, so one of the bridging themes throughout this podcast that we're finding is that these are huge adult issues that we are forcing children to face, and then this is the end all be all. So you get told these issues and it's nobody's fault.
Circumstance,
nobody knew, and it's a really great thing. However, one of the difficult sides of this is that as a child, you're given this adult information, and it's almost as if this like ask now or forever hold your peace when you're given that information. After that, you feel weird asking.
Yeah, and I think that that's why there is so much trauma, because you're not developed enough to even process it, you know? So I think, again, like Claire said, it's no one's fault. It's just what it is, unfortunately. So yeah, part of this is also trying to talk about that, because if we don't talk about the root issue or the root situation, then everything else is just kind of surface. You know, we really need to kind of dig deeper. And a lot of these things, like, I don't even consciously think about. And now that I think about it, it's like, oh yeah, that was a lot of heavy stuff to explain to a little kid. And I didn't even think about how a little kid would even process it. Like for me,
like how?
Yeah, I don't even remember. I remember vividly my mom always sitting us down and explaining adoption to us, because for us, you know, white parents, Asian babies, it's pretty obvious. But for other people, not so much. So yeah.
Yeah, like, so we've talked about before, one of the major differences between us is that I would sometimes tell people I was adopted and they wouldn't believe me. Like this was like this fun thing I was doing, because I feel like I look we all look similar. Like you'd never know. So even now, one thing that was mentioned in doing this, my parents have been extremely supportive. My mom has been extremely supportive, and it's been really great for us in catharsis, like a huge catharsis in our relationship, because even the stigma behind adoption towards adoptive mothers in the 80s it was aggressive. And I still even remember as a child witnessing some interactions that I felt fiercely protective of my mother. And then it became this thing where, you know, like in me telling my story, people were viewing her as either like defective or, you know, and there wasn't support. There wasn't support for adoptive mothers.
Well, the only reason my parents adopted us was because my mom couldn't physically have children. So that's why they wanted to adopt. And so I do remember there were moments growing up where my mom's friends would be having babies, and my mom was the first to organize a party, like everything like organized for that person. But I do know that deep down inside, I got a sense that, it hurt her, because she would love to have a biological child. Like, I know that, but unfortunately that's just wasn't in the cards. So I think
It's so hard.
yeah, it's tough. And honestly, I don't even give my mom enough credit because
You should call her right now.
I know. All right. Where are we at?
Ethnic, racial. Do you have any biological siblings?
Oh yeah. So biological siblings, what I was told, we have an older brother that was 5 years old when we were born. So maybe. And I don't know if they know about us. So
I for sure do. I believe, at least on one side, because it's my understanding that they didn't stay together. You know that song by, I think, Meatloaf, Paradise by the Dashboard Lights?
I know Meatloaf. I don't know his catalog very well.
It might not be actually it. But anyway, I feel like I was a backseat baby. So the likelihood of them, both parents staying unmarried and not procreating later, is very low. But
Oh yeah.
I've always had this weird... And so one thing we've talked about, we're going to do all the steps that adoptees do. We're actually going to, regardless of what our personal beliefs are on the subject or whatnot, I think we're going to go see a psychic, maybe.
Yeah.
Is one thing because we're trying to go through all the steps that adoptees normally go through and go through them for you and kind of have a resource for it. But I've always had this really strong feeling that I have younger siblings. I feel like I have at least two. And in my search, I'm not 100% sure if I want to find. That's actually segue question. Do you want to find your birth family?
100%.
You do?
Mm-hmm.
Birth parents?
Yep. Relatives,
Everyone?
uncles, aunts, anyone that's blood related to me, I would like to meet.
Even like the fun drunk uncle?
Especially the fun drunk uncle.
I don't know. I want to find siblings, I think. I'm undecided. So that's another area where we differ.
Yeah. Oh, and also in the Korean culture, I mean, there's a chance that they don't even want to see us. So, because again, culturally, giving up children for adoption, people live in shame, and it's not something they want to revisit. So,
I think it's like that as well in our like Canadian culture as well. In the 80s, I think there's a stigma.
Well, and I'll talk about Korean adoption and.
I think maybe in like Canadian adoption, I think it might be actually more of a shock if you go into it and they don't want to see you. I think that might actually be like versus an expected like, oh, this is a cultural bias that's already present. I think that maybe a lot of North American, even in that story that's forced upon you, you expect to go find your birth family. It's going to be great.
Yeah, I mean, but again, doing a birth parent search is one of those things. It's like you're opening Pandora's box. So you kind of have to be okay with whatever you find because it could be good, it could be bad, But for me, I just went too long thinking, I'll do a birth parent search one day. And it just got to a point where I was just like, look, if I want to do this and have my brothers included, life is just getting too complicated with us living in different cities and countries and families and just life in general. So, yeah, but I would definitely want to seek out or meet anyone that's blood related to me. Did you go to a foster home after leaving the hospital?
I don't know, but after some discussions, I think probably. Yeah, I think so. Orphanages weren't really like a thing.
Oh.
In the 80s in Canada.
Oh, they're massive.
I could be wrong. I don't know. So, but like, I don't.
From what I know, from what I was told, they couldn't find a foster mother that could take care of 3 babies at once. So they found 2 foster mothers in the same neighborhood. But then so Jeremy, the youngest out of us 3, was with one foster mother, and then Justin and I were together with another. So Jeremy was separated from us. But after speaking to a lot of people about this, they all tell me that it's very abnormal for that to happen. 1, why would you separate triplets? 2, foster mothers were taking care of 10 babies at a time. So there are still a lot of things that I'm discovering about our circumstance with how we were adopted and why that are kind of sketchy because, again, Korea was just a very different place when it came to adoption. So, but we shall see.
I think I have to ask you next.
Yeah, you could.
Yeah, we can skip that one, I think. Are your birth parents still alive?
Again, I was told they were both dead, so who knows?
I don't know, but with some recent health struggles and things I've been through, I could see possibly there being some cancer in my background. And every year that I wait, so one of the things that you don't think about, you talked about waiting for your birth parent search. So we're at the point now where, not to be a downer, but grandparents might not be alive. Every year that you wait, you run the risk of losing a connection. And I've been told a lot of stories just recently of people who missed out by a month.
Yeah, I mean, the email that I got telling me that my birth mother was dead, the guy said she passed away the previous June to the email. So then again, what I took it as fact because I didn't have any reason not to believe him. But the more I talk to other people that are Korean adoptees, which we have a very large community, Korean adoptees, we're called CADs. So I'm part of a CAD group here in Utah, and they all say the same thing. They're like, look, you can't, unless you can see a death certificate, like you cannot listen to anything anyone tells you because they might just be discouraging you from searching because your birth parents are too, I guess, worried about revisiting that shame of giving babies up. So, they'd rather just tell us that they're dead so we don't come looking. So it's complicated. Here we go. What traits did you inherit from your birth parents? Personality, looks, talents, if you know.
I think there's got to be someone in my birth family who's artistic. Definitely in terms of physical appearance, I'm extremely athletic. In looking at old footage of my brother and I growing up, I thought my calves were from gymnastics, like my muscle memory. But no, I was like a little tank baby. I had like little muscle legs.
I have no idea. I would just think that maybe they're artistic. I don't know, because my brothers and I are all artistic. So, but this kind of talks about the topic of nature versus nurture, but my mother would push creativity at a very young age. So I don't know if I personally think that we are artistic because of my mom, but not because of some
genetic
thing. So
are there any medical concerns that you should know about?
What I found out, or we found out, that our birth mother had hepatitis B. So because she had it, she transferred to us as carriers. So we just carry the gene, I guess, or carry Hep B. So we don't experience any cirrhosis of the liver, but we are at risk to eventually getting that. So that's just keeping our liver enzymes in check and our viral load down. So yeah, that's the only thing that we know about. I was born with like a slight heart defect and then lung issues, which led to 4 lung surgeries when I was growing up. So, but my brothers don't have any of those issues. So I was just the lucky one.
You're special.
I'm special.
For me, no. So this is a huge topic too, as well. Every time I go to the doctor, they'll ask if you have any medical history. And it's like, I don't know.
Yeah. I always say I'm adopted.
I'm adopted.
Yeah.
And I used to hate it as a kid, and even like up until something happened to me where, so if you don't know any of your records, like, well, full panel, like all the blood that I've been getting like I have, like you can see I have like just like, right there. That's my blood spot.
Yeah.
That they always take.
Yeah. I have too much scarring in these areas. So when I get an IV, or no, sorry, it's my hands. So they have to go through my bicep if I get another IV. So
Yeah. Well, and so they'll do panel. However, this turned out to be a good thing. I was screened for, and I'll get into my personal story a little bit later about, because I got that full gamut of tests that I found all that stuff. But yeah, so I have no idea. Probably some mental health stuff though.
And then final question, how did you find out you were adopted? Do you remember like the exact moment
I found out
where you were?
No. So my I really think the way, so I always knew and was told. However, I was bequeathed with this information. And of course, like you, as a child, you tell everyone everything. And so my mom and I discussed recently that I would just go tell people. And I'd be like, hi, I'm Claire. I'm adopted. My mom would be like, because you guys have to remember that in the 90s, like it wasn't, like it was considered almost shameful sometimes. And you didn't, like people saw you immediately and like would know. Whereas for us, people would be like, oh. And then my poor mom would be standing there like, but then again, kids say really weird, ridiculous stuff. But my parents did it in a really great way that there were books that were just like slipped into our reading material.
Is that the book you showed me?
Yeah. So it's Why Were You Adopted is one. And then
I have never seen any of those books. The idea of the books makes sense to me, but it'd be weird, I think, for me to read it opposed to... Yeah. I guess maybe if your parents sit you down and talk about it, that's fine, and you want to know a little more about it. But you got to back up. It's got to keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going.
It won't.
Yeah.
I'll post it in the episode notes. How did you find out you were adopted?
That wasn't the final question.
That's okay.
My bad. I just remember my mom sitting us down and just explaining, all right, you know, your mother couldn't take care of you, and that's why we adopted you. And she made it very clear that, you know, had nothing to do with not loving us or wanting us or anything like that. So that was instilled in us at a very young age. So I just never thought anything of it. I didn't view it as anything. I just thought, well, our life is pretty awesome right now. So who cares? Like I'm good. Like we're good. Thanks for letting us know. And obviously it's obvious because people are always asking about it. And back in the 80s, especially, it was just a lot of staring. Yeah, I do remember.
With fanny packs and mustaches.
Oh, yeah. Rat tails. I had rat tail.
You had a rat tail?
I had a rat tail.
I have a rat tail right now.
And we had it braided. We went to Bali every year. So we had it braided like Bo Derek, but just one rat tail. It was disgusting. But I do remember, and this is just fast forwarding, my brothers and I were looking for our first car. And so we went to a used car lot with our dad. In high school, we were 16 years old, and I remember the car dealer.
You shared one car?
Yes, it was terrible. So it was in Texas. It was a small town in Texas, and my dad is English, German, Norwegian, big. You know, he's a white guy, and so he says to my dad, he says, "Oh, you know, I sure do respect you buying a car for these foreign exchange students." And then my dad looks at this man. He says, "No, these are my sons." And he says, "Oh, shoot. I'm so sorry." He says, "I could totally see the resemblance." And then my dad says, "Stop talking." And it's just like, yeah. Or people will see my dad in pictures. They're like, "I could totally see it." I'm like, bro.
I get that all the time too. People are like, "You look just like your mom," or like.
But my dad is a white man. Like there is nothing about my dad that looks Asian, and there's nothing about me that looks white. And I just. At first, it would make me really angry. I'm like, come on, dude, like really? And then at the same time, I'm like, look, whatever. Like you can see what you want to see. That's fine. All good. But yeah.
Well, I think that's...
All right. How did learning that you were adopted change how you thought about your family, race, and culture?
Okay, so here's a huge heavy thing. So I was raised in one of the most phenomenal households in the fact that I've personally never, and this was something that was really great. It was always the understanding, and they use this in such a wonderful way. And I don't even know if they realize that they did this, but throughout my being raised, I was informed that I should never, I didn't know what race I was. So there was no racial pride,
Mm-hmm.
but that I didn't know what race I was, and so that I didn't know what race I was, and I also didn't know who was my family.
Mm.
So every person that you met could be your family, or do you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
So it was just this really great view, but it also kind of made me sad.
Yeah.
It made me really sad and like jealous in a way.
Because you felt disconnected?
I still
Yeah.
feel a disconnect. And it's always really funny. You talk about how people tried to find people try to connect the dots in life.
Mm-hmm.
So people were trying to connect the dots between you and your dad and what's going on. So for me, whenever I tell someone that I don't know, they'll immediately start analyzing my facial features and they'll be like, oh, your nose is German, or you're Scandinavian, or
Yep.
you're this. So something that we're going to do throughout this podcast is that we're trying to find, I've been in contact with some forensic artists to try to have them analyze my facial features.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, I'm still with us right now. So it's kind of hard to reverse engineer that. So we're trying to find if anyone has any suggestions on people. We're trying to go from the outside in and peel back every layer before I do genetic tests. So, because you can't go backwards.
Yep.
And no. But so people will try to claim me or tell me what I am, or, you know what I mean? They're like, no. And then they get so like, that's what they tell me I am. And then they're like, great, I solved the mystery.
Mm-hmm.
I have like Sherlock Holmes you, this is what you are. And it would always leave me feeling like really uncomfortable.
Yeah, that would be weird. I don't know. I mean,
I really like pierogies and potatoes though, like an unhealthy amount of potatoes. So
I have had my fair share of pierogies.
but like I'm obsessed with potatoes. So if I'm Irish or Ukrainian,
I could see that. But again, I mean, that would just be weird, someone telling you or
what
trying
you
to
are.
tell you.
Like connecting the dots.
Yep. For me, I mean, again, being raised by a very large white family, I never viewed myself as Asian. And then the culture was just weird because we were always in a new country every 3 to 4 years. So we were just kind of thrust into a new culture, customs, language, all that stuff. So I don't identify with any one culture or race. I get racist DMs every day. So, but that's another thing.
So this is it. This was really interesting.
Yep.
I was researching podcast questions. One thing that we found out about this is that you've found terms or things that describe me that I had no idea. And I've found terms or things that describe you that you had no idea. And
I didn't know it was like a term. Like I didn't know there was a word for it.
And so do you think there is such thing as being trans-ethnic?
Yeah. So the definition of that is just identifying with another, whether it be race or background that might not be what you physically are. And yes, absolutely. Because I don't know anything about the Korean culture for the most part. I don't eat a ton of Korean food, even though I've had it a lot. I know more about Italian food than I do Korean food. So for me, yeah, I just always tell people that I'm the fakest Asian you'll ever meet. So, yeah, what is it?
You have a German nose.
A German nose. No, where we say we're Twinkies. We're yellow on the outside, white on the inside. So, what about you?
Yeah, I have no idea.
Yeah.
Like, I always joke that there should be like an adoptive pavilion at Mosaic, where you just like steal the things that you like from other cultures, and our symbol would be a giant question mark.
But then, like, if you really thought about it, most cultures are parts of other cultures anyway, if you really traced everything back. So, I mean, yeah, I think being an expat is a very different lifestyle than most people, because most people might live in the same town for most of their life and then move, or maybe stay in the same town for all their life. So for me, I always envied people that never moved. And again, that was just...
Ooh, that was me. Yeah. I was in the same house for like 19 years.
I thought it was the coolest thing, because for me, I never knew what that was. It was always family meeting, and then it would always be a pamphlet of the school we were going to, brochures of the country. Like, it was always like this thing. And it was a sore spot for my brothers and I, because we had just made friends. We had just moved and settled in, and now we're moving to a brand new country. It's not like moving to another town. Like, we literally moved from Italy, Singapore, London, Norway. So like all those things, it was just so jarring as a kid.
That was my dream.
But it was amazing in retrospect. And I wish I could go back and smack my old self in the face, because there were so many times where I would just get so upset over seeing things that my parents wanted us to see. I remember seeing Stonehenge for the first time and I was so pissed off. I just told my mom, this is a bunch of stupid rocks in the middle of nowhere. Why are we here? This is stupid. And I'm just like, man, like,
You're kind of a little.
Yeah, like we were spoiled.
Isn't that great though? So I grew up actually in the same home my whole life, and I was a weird kid. I was heavily bullied, and like looking back, like I get it now. But here's the kicker: the people from my play school class got married to each other. So if you picture in like Regina back in the day, the people I went to play school with, I went to high school with, and had I stayed, I would have gone to university with.
So they all just kind of go on the same track.
Same thing. So you like literally go, you had your class and you'd be with them for like the rest of your life.
Yeah.
And so
as I got older, that stuff I'm like, I don't envy. You know?
Like literally I made my first impression in kindergarten.
Yeah.
And like that stuck with me and I was.
Well, I've kept in touch with anyone I've gone to school with ever, for the most part. And most people are like, why are you talking to someone you went to kindergarten with? I'm like, well, it's a little different situation. You know, I mean, as a third culture kid and just an expat, you're kind of, you form fast friendships quickly because you're amongst other kids that are in the same boat as you, which is uncomfortable. Again, you don't know the language. You can't really get around by yourself. So you kind of just cling on to each other a little tighter than normal. So
do you ever think, so I have that actual reaction as well as an adoptee, my friends, and it's very difficult to get deep within my group, but we used to joke because I always get whenever I do a spirit animal test or anything, I always get wolf. Just wolf all the time, wolf. And so
wait, there are spirit animal tests?
Yeah, you should do it. I really hope you're something like a firefly or something like that. I could see you being an owl. You'll go take it immediately after this.
Okay.
But I always get wolf. Sometimes bear, but wolf or bear. That's all I get. And so I find that the people I form family level friendships. So it's almost like they're siblings because blood is a misnomer for me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like
it's blood doesn't. Irrelevant. Yeah, it doesn't. That's another thing I think is a common thing amongst adoptees that are. Again, we're just speaking from two adoptees that have amazing families, which we're very lucky and fortunate.
Yeah.
Where blood, it's irrelevant. It doesn't really mean anything because for us it's more than that. So
I also think this brings a great point that it is our responsibility to make sure if you guys feel that we are not capturing a sector of the adoptee community or things that you want us to review or you want to share your story on our podcast.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we do have a very different background as well, but we recognize that our experience is perhaps not your experience.
Yeah, and we're only two people. So the thing is adoption covers so many things. So we want to talk about foster care. We want to talk about things that we might not know anything about, but our efforts are to try to bring everyone under the umbrella together. So, yeah. Well, that was awesome.
We did it.
All right. Well, thank you guys for listening and stay tuned because we have a lot more to talk about.
If you'd like to connect with us on Instagram or TikTok, you can find us at
Origins Unknown Podcast.
You can follow my co-host at
Beyond the Tats.
You can find me at
Sea Bear Huntington. We're also on Twitter. Follow us at
Unknown Podcast. If you'd like to visit our website, it's
originsunknownpodcast.com. Also, if you'd like to send us questions, share your story, or even just say hi, you can send us an email at
hello@originsunknownpodcast.com. Special thanks to Pace Randolph for writing, performing, and producing the audio for our podcast. Follow him on Spotify for more wonderful music.